Hello everyone and welcome back to Plane Time. Ben Coleman, your anchor host, and we're here at the National Aviation Safety Foundation is the sponsor of the Florida Aviation Network, and we're coming back to segment 2B, as we call it, with Gary Dahlke.
You got it.
Gary Dahlke. Gary, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Civil Air Patrol and some of the cadet programs. And I believe you have some photos that you'd like to share with our viewing audience.
Yeah, this should help spark some interest in any youth that might be watching this, and especially if they're Civil Air Patrol cadets will want to watch this. All right, these are many of these photos are taken from the activity itself, and here we have a picture of a prior year group at the visitor complex at Kennedy Space Center, which we also get to do the touristy type stuff. There's so much to take in. We would be foolish not to take advantage of a chance to go see flight hardware like the Space Shuttle Orbiter Atlantis, which is now on public display. So we definitely check out all the cool things that they have at the visitor complex on display, in addition to a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that we get to do. So these are a group of cadets getting some instruction from me. I think I'm way there in the back telling them about some of the elements of the orbiter, and more importantly, the thermal protection system. The outside of the vehicle is literally covered with the heat shield, and I worked heat shield for many years on the shuttle program, so I've got a little bit more than common knowledge on that. So I'm pointing out some of the elements of the thermal protection system on Atlantis. But this is one of the many stops that we take during that activity. Let's go to the next one. This is a very historic site. This is where America's first manned spaceflight occurred. This is Launch Complex 5-6 at Cape Canaveral, and on the pad now is a full-scale replica, a very accurate full-scale replica of Alan Shepard's rocket and spacecraft that took America into space in 1961. America's first astronaut launched at that very location. We go and visit that site. And we get to go inside the Launch Control Center that controlled the launch of Alan Shepard. And I should also add, a couple months later, Gus Grissom flew from that exact same spot on a mission very similar to what Alan Shepard flew. Another place we get to go, now we're getting into some of the really cool stuff. This is operational. We get to go inside the Atlas Space Flight Operations Center located on Cape Canaveral. This is where the Atlas rockets are prepared prior to launch. You see in this picture 2 Atlas rockets. The main engines on the first stage are depicted here in this picture. This is a stock file photo, so we don't have cadets shown in this picture, but this is where one of the many places that cadets get to go behind the scenes that the general public never gets a chance to see in person. All right, so let's go. Next slide is even better. We get to go to this location as well. Here you see an Atlas rocket in the vertical integration facility. That's the tower. And where you see ULA right to the left of that is the first stage of the Atlas with at least 3 solid rocket motors strapped onto it. There will probably be 2 motors on the other side that you can't see. And then what they're getting ready to do is mate the upper stage to it. And this is another typical location that the cadets will get to see that very few people in their day-to-day lives get a chance to see up close and personal like we see here in this picture. All right, let's go to another one. Oh, this is a great shot. The cadets get to go into the Mission Directors Center on Cape Canaveral. And this is, of course, an operational facility. But when the cadets go to visit, the individuals there run a training scenario. And the cadets sit at all of the positions that you see the real rocket scientists at in this image, and they get to follow through a countdown of an operational launch. And so they take the video that was collected for a past launch, run that through, and then they sit at these positions and they respond to the activities that those individuals respond to during an actual launch. And it gives them a real-world experience of what it's like to make a rocket go off the Cape. So a very realistic environment that they get put into. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, this is a fun part here. typically, during that week of time, there's maybe a 50-50 chance that the cadets will actually see a rocket go off the Cape. Due to scheduling and whatever, they may or may not get a chance. Anytime that they don't get a chance to see a rocket go off the Cape, we like to bring them out and show them what sort of a real rocket looks like. And
So
here we see
you're getting
pictures.
ready to light that one up.
We're going to light that one up. We're taking it out to the pad and going to light this candle, as Alan Shepard referred to it when he went into space the first time. But this rocket depicts something much bigger than most youth are used to working with. As a kid, I got into model rocketry and was building, Estes rockets that were maybe 12 to 18 inches. The really big ones were 2 feet tall. This one clearly is much larger. This is all done under the auspices of the Federal Aviation Administration. In order to fly that rocket, you need an FAA certificate in order to make that happen. That was set up for this particular event, and the cadets took the rocket out to the pad and watched it fly, and then they got to be on the recovery team to go fetch it after it came down. But due to the electronics that are on board, the recovery events are controlled, and we can actually bring the rocket down fairly close to where we launched it as a result of that. So it's a great way to spend the morning for the cadets, to see a larger rocket up close and see the workings of that. And they get introduced to the advanced rocketry program that Civil Air Patrol has in place. There's a program that cadets can get involved with larger rockets such as these. And if they pursue that program, they can get involved. After they leave our activity, they can go back to their units and pursue activities similar to what you see depicted in that picture. And last thing I wanted to throw up here is a partial listing of the 50 activities that we currently have. The top one shows National Blue Beret. That's where you get to go to Oshkosh. And the one where the triangle is, Space Force Operations Academy, that's the one I get to do. Again, that's the one where we get over 200 applicants each year, and we get to select an elite 27 cadets to participate in that. But I should point out, if you don't, you have several years that you're in the cadet program. If you don't make it one year, you can cycle right back around and apply and keep applying. And generally, most cadets, sometime during the time they're in CAP, will get a chance to go to the activities that are high up on their choice of what they want to do.
Until you hit the age of 21.
And until when you're 21, then you got to go do it as an adult. But then you can turn right back around and come and participate in the activity as an adult member of CAP, because each of these requires an adult staff. And if you didn't ever get to do it as a cadet, you can turn around and perhaps apply as an adult.
Well, Gary, I would sure like to generate a little bit more enthusiasm.
Okay, let's see what we can do.
We need to get your energy level up a little bit.
Okay.
Have another donut.
The real world of space is really cool, and that's what this second element is going to focus on. The advances in spaceflight in the past few years has been, should I say, astronomical, to use to coin a phrase. It's unbelievable, the amount of activity that is now being generated in the world of spaceflight. So we take some time and talk about some of the cool stuff that's happening.
Well, let's talk about O&M. I want to develop O&M with you.
Operations and maintenance.
Can you
yes.
talk O&M?
I'm familiar with that term. I did O&M for many years in the Air Force and also with spaceflight after I left active duty.
Okay, operations, that's
Right.
pretty well common. Everybody knows what deals with operations.
The term is well understood. When you see operations, that's making everything happen.
Does it just happen, Gary, or is there a lot that goes on to make it happen?
And that's what these cadets get to see, is what it takes to make it happen. The general public, when they watch a launch, they see, maybe 5 minutes of the countdown, the rocket goes up, and then they go back to what they're doing. Although the Cape Canaveral area is continuing to draw an increasing number of spectators to see rocket launches. Mm-hmm. The interest in spaceflight, I think, has been rekindled on a level that rivals the early space program. It's absolutely amazing the things that both NASA and commercial users have planned for what's coming up in the future.
We are in the space age. It is the new space age.
It absolutely is.
And again, even that rocket that was being hoisted on the shoulders
of the cadets, right?
But a computer didn't build that rocket.
You're correct.
So, and it still takes that dexterity.
Eye-hand coordination,
okay?
right.
So that's, the maintenance is going to be involved, and even folks might think that the shuttle, the space shuttle that was launched, and of course we're beyond that phase.
That era, right.
When a shuttle, compared to the very first shuttle, to the last shuttle, what was the similarities of those other than just the shape?
Yes, the shape never changed. Only very minor elements of the actual shape of the orbiter changed. But internally, a number of improvements were made along the way. One is the glass cockpit. I mean, I think most people are familiar with the term glass cockpit. When the shuttle first launched, we had an array of steam gauges in the orbiter showing the crew what they were experiencing. About halfway through the program, they upgraded to the glass cockpit, which NASA, of course, has to devise its own term for it, called it MEDS. Let me see if I can get this. Multifunctional Electronic Display System. All right, that equals glass cockpit. So all of those dials and gauges got put into a computer screen, and the crew could pick and choose what they wanted to focus on, call it up onto a screen, and see exactly what data they needed to see at various times during their flight. So that was a major significant improvement in the shuttle program. And then other elements like the second robotic arm. There was initially the shuttle had a single robotic arm. Later in the program, and I should say after we lost Columbia, a second robotic arm was added. That was to enhance safety more than anything else, because that second arm allowed the crew then to join the two arms together and put a TV camera virtually anywhere on that vehicle so that they could inspect it and see if there was any damage similar to what caused the Columbia accident.
So we learn as we go, and we improve as we learn, and we prevent from what we have learned from our improvements.
Absolutely.
So that sounds an awful lot like a safety management system.
It certainly is.
And if we use this principle for safety management systems on not only our spacecraft, but our motorcycle or our car, the likelihood of having failures is diminished greatly.
Yes.
So how can we get our young people to wrap their heads around it doesn't just happen? And when things start to go wrong, you just take the car, give it back to mom and dad, and you get a new one, right?
Right.
No. You got to start getting involved and reading out the computer chip, your modules. And now working on a car is not like it was when we were coming up.
That's for
as
sure.
kids.
Yes.
Changing the points, plugs, and condenser for a tune-up. What? Changing points, plugs,
What
the heck
are
is
those
that?
even? What do those mean?
No, you just plug in a new computer module and you're fine.
And you're good, right?
I digress. Okay, research and development. You were involved with a lot of research and development.
Not so much. That is a whole different ball game. Both on the Minuteman weapon system, that was already in place by the time I came on the scene. We did have improvements that were made in Minuteman during the time I was on it. When I came to Shuttle, I came into Shuttle in 1993. The first flight was in 1986. So Shuttle was considered fully operational by that time. Although, in hindsight, NASA recognized that the Shuttle program never really was truly fully operational. And they recognized that after Challenger and said, we need to consider this as a research and development program throughout. And at least take that attitude so that when things crop up, anomalies crop up, we pay much more attention to them than we may have had in the past.
Well, it's unfortunate that it takes losses
Right.
to really fortify and drive the point home of how important, how essential it is to have a system in place to drill into a problem in order to implement a corrective action into the problem.
Oh, yeah.
And see it through to fruition, because it's going to change.
And how NASA was able to determine both Challenger and Columbia as to what the root causes of those were. And NASA's philosophy is, well, all right, so we've had something bad happen. We are going to make absolutely sure that that never happens again. And we saw it in the workforce, the things that they implemented, both post-Challenger and post-Columbia, as to how serious NASA took the safety and to make sure that those crews were as safe as they possibly can be when they're on orbit.
We would have never known what the term Gordon Thykol was until we lost our first shuttle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for those who don't know what Gordon Thykol involved, look it up.
Right.
We're
Well,
not
actually,
gonna
it's Morton Thykol.
Morton Thykol.
You've heard of Morton Salt? That was
Morton
the Morton in Morton
Thykol.
Thykol. Right.
The engineers, I think, well, and we won't get into the weeds on that, but please look it up. Morton Thykol.
It's an eye-opening experience when you read into the
What
lead up into that and what was done in the aftermath.
what was known, and we talked earlier about our Pearl Harbor fire.
Yes, right.
So that's a whole different segment. We won't
Yeah,
get into that one
right.
on this, but Civil Air Patrol being involved with space is not, it's not in the future, it's now.
It's the here and now. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And how further do we get involved with getting our youth involved with this? Do they have to go to the Cape, or are there more local programs to get involved? How far will you travel?
How far will I travel? I got a CAP unit in Texas that wants me to come out and talk about space to them.
Okay.
So we're trying to work that out. I do go to the national conferences. We have a national conference every year, and I talk on both the cadet programs and the aerospace education programs that we have in place for CAP. So that's a way of getting the word out within Civil Air Patrol. But I tell you, the youth today are very in tune with media, and NASA, I think, is becoming very savvy in how they talk about what is going on within NASA, as do all of the other rocket companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and many others. So you don't have to go anywhere but your iPhone or your smartphone or your laptop and pull up and get very much interested and learn a lot about what's going on in the current world of space. But I have some pictures and some things we could talk about that are absolutely front and center in what's going on in spaceflight. So we can go into that.
It's a good thing you're young, Gary.
Because
you got a lot of work to do yet.
well, getting the next generation interested, and that's one of the things I focus on. And I've seen it from year after year, just working this one activity that I direct. I'm turning it on for the next generation because they see it, and as I said before, there are some that make a career commitment at the end of that program to go into aerospace.
Well, and it's going to have to. We're going to have to start seeing a change because in my old days, you'd have to go out to the training courses and you'd have to travel to and sit in front of an instructor and
Sure.
We're to the point now. Computer-based training is. I wish that we have more of it out there, and it's all primarily about funding. I mean, if you've got all the time in the world and all the money in the world, you can travel to these places, and you can sit in front of the experts and learn from the experts. But now we're going to have to really concentrate on the experts being taken out to the masses. I believe that's the next frontier,
Right.
as far as bringing that to Zoom meetings. I mean, this COVID pandemic has made a lot of folks work from home.
Yeah.
You've probably been affected.
I've been on so many Zoom calls, my head's spinning. And I'll tell you, no matter how well you plan a Zoom call, there is some kind of way for something to go wrong somewhere along that whole carefully planned session. I'm old school. I'm a traditionalist. I don't think anything can beat in-person interaction. That's my own philosophy. But I do know that the new elements of media that make us or allow us to interact remotely is going to pick up and take an enormous amount of training that we typically in the past have considered in person.
I just hope that we don't lose all of that aspect of the fleshware and pressing flesh
Right.
and being in
Right.
person. Gary, were there some photographs that you want to share with
Yeah,
us?
let's go to the space file here. This has been in the news. I think most people look at that picture and now recognize exactly what that is. 6 months ago, you could throw that picture up and 90% of the people go, what is that? That's the James Webb Telescope. And I don't want to say it's a follow-on or the replacement to the Hubble telescope, because both of these instruments will now continue to function independently of each other. Hubble will continue to return extraordinary astronomy science, and the James Webb Telescope, when it's fully operational, will go well beyond what Hubble has brought us as far as imagery and data in the astronomical community. This current, the photograph you see there is of the telescope itself, pre-flight, in its folded up configuration. In order to get it to fit on the rocket, they had to make it able to, like a Tinker Toy or a transformer, fold into a much more compact area. That's pre-flight. The next picture will show what it looks like when it's fully deployed. Again, though, this is still on the ground. This is prior to the flight, but shows you what it looks like when the elements are fully deployed. And this is one of my favorite pictures because it's a mock-up. It's a full-scale mock-up. They would never take the telescope out on the front lawn and take the picture, but that's the size. That depicts the size of the James Webb Telescope, and that dwarfs the Hubble telescope in its sheer size and its capability. The Webb telescope is roughly 100 times better than what the James Webb is roughly 100 times better than what Hubble was able to produce for us. But these are some of the many thousands of people that worked on the James Webb telescope, getting a chance to take a family picture of it to show you how big that instrument is.
You mentioned the Hubble, and this little segue here. Story Musgrave has been our guest many times.
Oh my gosh, I know Story. He doesn't know me all that well, but I've met him, and he's a fantastic communicator.
Absolutely. And I think he's been on Hubble at least 2, maybe 3 times.
Yeah, he's been on a number of Hubble flights. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's jump back in. I didn't mean to
So that's
sideline
one. The James Webb is like one of the many cool things, but we are going to be seeing some rockets taken off from Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral that will blow you away. The rocket you see depicted there is larger and more powerful than the Saturn V rocket that took us to the moon.
Goodness.
It's based on space shuttle technology. If you look at the 2 white solid rocket boosters on either side, those solid rocket boosters not only have the design carryover, that's the actual hardware. I worked on some of the hardware that you see in that picture during the shuttle program, and now it's going to be used on the Space Launch System. So those 2 solid rocket boosters are all from shuttle program hardware. The boosters have been extended longer than what we used for shuttle to give them more power. The tank design, the orange tank that you see there, is designed on the Space Shuttle's external tank. The rocket engines that you don't see them because they're covered by the launch platform. Those are all Space Shuttle main engines that flew in the shuttle program that are now going to be flown also again in the Space Launch System. But this is the vehicle that will take American astronauts to the vicinity of the moon. It needs another vehicle to land them on the surface of the moon, but this is the vehicle that will take the astronauts to lunar orbit, and then they will translate into another vehicle to land on its surface. This rocket will be launching before the end of 2022. So mark, I don't want to say mark your calendars because we don't have the date set yet, but that is going to create some noise when it leaves the Cape. As I said, this will then become the most powerful rocket ever launched anywhere on the planet.
But Gary, we all know that was just done in a television studio.
But don't get me started. Don't get me started on that. But yeah, that's coming up. So keep an eye out for that.
Do you have more?
Yeah, we got more. I like this picture because it's sort of like another family of rockets, although it's not all from the same parent. All right, so on the left you have the iconic space shuttle, and that's basically included just so you have a sense of the size of the size comparisons. My first time on the launch pad with a vehicle on the pad, it just overwhelmed me at how big it was. And now look how much bigger we are getting even beyond how the shuttle was. Falcon Heavy, you may be familiar with that. That's a Falcon rocket that's got 2 additional stages strapped onto either side of the central core vehicle of the Falcon, which creates the Falcon Heavy configuration. That's the least common rocket of the Falcon family that's flown. Falcon 9 is the much more common version, which is basically the central rocket that you see depicted in that picture. The Space Launch System, you see next to it, we saw the other picture of it, and that was computer generated. You look at that first off and you think, well, that's a picture of the actual rocket. That was a computer generated image, and of course this is an artist's concept. Again, next to that we have the iconic Saturn V rocket that took American astronauts to the moon during the 1960s and 1970s. And then to the right of that we have the Spacex Starship. And Starship is what is going to take American astronauts to the surface of the moon here in the next coming years. Starship in the configuration that you see there includes the big Falcon rocket, which is the lower stage. That's based on the Falcon design, but the rocket engines are more powerful than what SpaceX currently uses for the Falcons. And the upper stage is where the crew would be contained, and that will be in orbit around the moon. The crew in the Space Launch System will mate up with that in lunar orbit, the spacecraft itself, which in the photograph where you see SLS Block 1, just the very top of that is what houses the astronaut crew. Okay? That stick on the top is the launch escape system. That gets jettisoned if they get into orbit successfully. But the crew then is in that conical section that's right below the stick that is their escape system. That will rendezvous with Starship, the crew will transfer into Starship, and Starship will land on the surface of the moon.
And Gary, I think we've got one more photograph.
Okay, we have a couple. Let's see what we got here. Go to the next. Oh. If you go to Boca Chica is the new Cape Canaveral. This picture is taken in Boca Chica, Texas, and that's where SpaceX does their testing of Starship. Those are two Starships that were depicted in the illustration that either will be flying or have flown. I don't know what the status currently is of those. That was a stock file that I grabbed off the internet. But those are two Starships. Those are the upper stages. And SpaceX, to test those, launches just the upper stage, sends it up to 20, 30,000 feet, and then just tests its ability to return. And that vehicle lands vertically. And so what you see here now is one of the Starships landed vertically on the surface of the moon, and at the very bottom of it, you can see the little tiny creatures in there. Those are the astronauts. That gives you a sense of the size of this vehicle that's going to be heading to the moon here in the coming years. There's a little rover depicted at the base of it, and those little tiny things are all astronauts. And then this one is another size comparison, gives you the BFR stands for Big Falcon Rocket. It's got the Starship mated to the top of it. Two that we hadn't seen before are called New Glenn. You have New Glenn 2-stage and New Glenn 3-stage. That's being built by a company called Blue Origin. And I always like to make this illustration in describing how Blue Origin operates. Have you ever bought anything off Amazon?
Never.
Any chance? Never?
Amazon
A few
what?
people have.
Okay.
And it was the profits that Jeff Bezos literally got from the existence of Amazon that made him, I believe he's now the richest man in the world. And he started his own company, Blue Origin, from the money he made off of Amazon. And they are building a brand new launch pad on Cape Canaveral that will be launching the New Glenn rockets. And it's all on the money that he made in Amazon that is now making Blue Origin go forward.
Gary, we're going to have to get you back.
Okay, I'll come back. But that's just a snippet of the cool stuff that's happening in spaceflight.
Again, I want your enthusiasm to come up the next time you come to visit us here.
Right, I'll try and crank it up a notch or two.
There's so much more to learn from you, but Gary,
I enjoyed it very much.
I do want to thank you.
Good working with you.
A lot more to learn. A lot more to learn.
All right, we'll do it again.
And that's going to finish up this final segment. And now for your FAA Wings code. And we're not going to make you go to yeah, we are. We're going to make you go to a black slide and copy that code down and put that in for your Wings credit for this hour. Again, as usual, it's been our pleasure to bring these compelling information stories to you and to just pike your interest, because you need to go to gocivilairpatrol.com, www.gocivilairpatrol.com. And we're going to thank our guests today, both Dean Brown earlier and as well Gary Dahlke for spending their Saturday morning here with us at Florida Aviation Network. I'm Ben Coleman. We'll see you later.